It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate. Oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, we love movies, and we love superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Dillard.
And my name is Mike Royer.
And this week we're talking about Marvel's new approach to their TV series, Mike.
Ooh, yes.
Probably the only news you've sent me in the past 3 weeks, probably, or if not a month, was this. And I'm like, this is going to be great to talk about on the show.
Yes, it was big enough to break through into my vacation, and I stopped all the presses, and I read it while I was in picturesque Scotland, and I was like, no, I got to read about Daredevil right now.
Exactly. And this has been a really good conversation week for that, so we're going to break it down for it. Two other things. Mike has caught up on Loki season 2. It's only 2 episodes, so we're going to talk about how the show has started off since we're a third of the way through it. And then I believe you've also finished Ahsoka, Mike, so we can actually come through and review the Ahsoka series in its finality, because we didn't really talk about it week to week. So I think it'd be good to come talk about it here, a week and a half, almost 2 weeks after it's wrapped up. So I think it'll be a fun little show we got going on today.
Yeah, we got a bit of like a supersized episode here because we took the week off last week. So obviously all the news rolls over into this week as well. So we got a lot of good stuff to go over here. I am back from vacay, so I tried to bring back some tidbits that could possibly relate to the show in any sort of context, because I'm not just going to come on here and just tell everyone what I did on my vacation. Though I suppose maybe in the future there could just be a version of this podcast where we just throw away all of the nerdy stuff and then we just talk about what our lives are like. Which sometimes I feel like this is what the top of the show ends up being anyway.
Yeah, sometimes that is. You know, if it's not that, it's snacks, Mike. And the one thing I can trust from you to send me is all the food you ate over there. So I appreciate the visuals. I wish you could get taste through photos, right? When are we going to get the iPhone with the screen you can lick and get the flavor of what's on the other side? I don't know.
Fanta is out of control in Europe in a sense of like it's everywhere. Like I thought Fanta was just popular over here. They're not just doing the turn your poop green colors over here. They're doing every flavor combo I've ever seen in my life over in Europe. So if you're a Fanta fan and you're here in the States, you gotta get your ticket and go. So lots of delicious Fanta flavors over there. But for part of our trip, we were in Northern Ireland, and we kind of stumbled into an impromptu Game of Thrones set tour over there. Oh, nice. So much so, we had all of these places that we visited along the northern coast of Ireland. And then after we were done, halfway through our vacation, before we left and went over to Scotland, I was like, I'm going to look up a Game of Thrones Ireland like bus tour and see where they go. And lo and behold, we went to almost every place a bus tour went anyway.
Oh, nice.
So so it's pretty crazy. It's always humbling, I guess, to see how camera trickery works, right? You know, I'll think back to watching an episode of Game of Thrones where they're inside of these like seaside cliffs talking about like magic or demons or succession or death or, you know, whatever they talk about on Game of Thrones, right? And you're just like, wow, what a beautiful location. They must have had to hoof it like into the wilderness to get this shot. And actually, no, you flip the camera around and there's like some houses. There's there's like a little chippy shop. If you turn the corner, you would see a line of tour buses that stop to get off there. So it was pretty wild that like these picturesque, amazing places just exist where people live.
You mentioned that, and the first thing that always comes to mind is like the pyramids. Right, the Great Pyramids, and they're like, oh, they're out in the desert by themselves and no one's around them. But when you get like an aerial view, it's like, you know, hundreds of miles of city, like densely packed city, like right next to them, and you're like, oh, obviously the cameras and editing makes you think otherwise.
And there's always a KFC, I feel like, in those pyramid pictures, too. That just must be the closest American thing to the pyramids is just a KFC.
The only good thing that comes out of Kentucky, Mike, was the KFC. So absolutely, we gotta put those things everywhere, right? That's what we're doing.
But my second tidbit, which is something related I brought up before on the show, where me and you, obviously we're going to be talking about the Spider-Man video game here in a moment, right? But we poured over those first two games over and over again, and we always talked about how amazing it is to swing through the city. And we've kind of gotten word that it's a pretty accurate representation of Manhattan, at least with proximity of where things are supposed to be. Not necessarily the scale. The scale is scaled down. But I ended up going to New York around the time that first Spider-Man came out, and it like really helped me get my bearings. Like obviously I couldn't wayfind street by street, but I was like, oh, I know the context of where we're going to get dinner, or the
crime's happening the street over here, so I need to go help out with that.
Yes, or maybe what end of Central Park I'm on, right? So I had a similar moment where our last day on the trip, we were in London, and we were lucky enough to have somebody showing us around, and we're taking the tube, and we walk up from underground, and I'm in Piccadilly Circus, and it just was so surreal because I was like, oh my God. And they're like, what? I was like, I've played this map in multiplayer Call of Duty like 100 times. Like I know exactly where everything is. And this is an instance where you can recreate kind of a little city square accurate, like 1-to-1, 100% in like a multiplayer, like first person shooter map, right? Spider-Man, obviously you got to scale down an entire city, but I was just like, this feels so odd because like all of the buildings are, I was like, oh, that's where like you run in and you can get upstairs to the second floor. Like, oh, this is where all like the taxi cabs are like piled up, or, oh, you can't go further past because there's barricades on this part of the map. It was just such a surreal feeling of just like I know this. This is the Unix system. I know this, like from Jurassic Park. It was so wild. But then I had to admit to the person that was showing us around, I was just like, oh, I know this from a video game. Sorry for like nerding out in front of you. But it was so odd. I was just like vibing in the area. So yeah, I would love to know if anyone else has ever had that type of experience. And I got to imagine like it would probably be from like a Call of Duty, right? I can't think of a lot of other games that are recreating places so 1-to-1. So I guess if you're in other parts of the world, have you experienced Call of Duty maps IRL?
Call of Duty, I would say, I don't know how real it is, to modern times, but Assassin's Creed games have always tried to rebuild kind of the areas those are in, right? And there's a new Assassin's Creed game that came out, I believe, that's set in India. So I don't know if the historical portion of that, but yeah, absolutely, we are trained professionals in these locations from the safety of our homes, playing video games all the time.
And it totally makes me realize those because that Neil Blomkamp, is it Need for Speed movie that's coming out this summer?
No, the one that came, the Gran Turismo movie that's out.
Gran Turismo, not Need for Speed. Where it's based on a true story of like somebody becoming a race car driver, and there's like a part in the trailer. It's just like, oh, I know this map. I've driven it like hundreds of times, and I was like, actually, I kind of get that. Like, if I was in like a firefight situation in Piccadilly Circus, I would not engage, but I feel like, I'd maybe know where to run to get out of the way. So yeah, there you go. If you want to mentally train yourself, well, just get into the video game.
Well, it kind of leads me to the one thing I've done this week, Mike, and we talked a little bit about this. I've got a Quest 3 in the mail this week, and I was playing with it. And you've kind of given me the idea, if I ever need to go somewhere to another country or another town I'm not familiar with, why not just pull up Google Maps and walk it in VR for a little bit? Because then I'm like, oh, I can remember this a little bit from the visual experience rather than
it would help.
That. Yeah,
I think legitimately it would help, and that actually could be really helpful if somebody had like a form of maybe like really intense anxiety, right, where new spaces are really unnerving. If you could just drop in, if even for a couple moments, just to get the feeling or like the energy of the space, I think that would help a ton.
Exactly, and you would kind of maybe get your bearings when you come out a little bit better, and like, oh, I need to go left and right, and it's something that you can do in your own time without moving pieces around you, your own pace. So that kind of gives me an idea to kind of play with that a little bit, maybe later. I'll have you send me all the places you stop, Mike, and maybe I'll do my own virtual tour from the safety of my own home. But so we got a big episode. Let's go and jump into it. You mentioned Spider-Man, the video game, and this coming Friday, 10/20, Spider-Man 2, the game will arrive on PlayStation 5 after I believe 5 years since the first one came out, and then a couple years since Miles has come out. So I'm very, very excited to play this.
Well, it's here. I saw ads for it in the subway in London. I saw commercials for it over there, which reminded me that I need to I guess technically pre-order it because I can download it ahead of time and then it just unlocks on Friday and I don't have to worry about getting it all.
It is already ready to preload. They did it on 10/13 if you want to. I believe, and this is something that it's not in the notes here, but I'm actually going to go physically purchase it on Friday morning. Okay. Because that's also the same day the new Mario game comes out. Ironically, so I can get that for my wife, so she's entertained while I'm playing Spider-Man. But there is a couple stores, Best Buy and Walmart, are getting out of the business of selling physical media.
I saw that. Yeah,
Best Buy specifically movies, and Walmart specifically games. And while, again, I have nothing against digital. I buy things digitally, Mike. We stream things. It's great. There's just something about, are you just leasing these games? Right until those virtual servers shut down. Like Nintendo recently shut down their Wii U and 3DS servers, right? So you can't go back and get stuff off there anymore. So I worry about that, but at the same time, I'm like, well, when did I ever want to go re-download a 3DS game? So I understand the life expectancy, and you're like, oh yeah, we've moved on. But I'm just like, man, I really want to pick up Spider-Man on a physical so I can have it there with the rest of my games, but down the road, maybe I can still play it a little bit if that happens. So,
what a sign of the times. I think I noticed it really for the first time maybe a year or two ago when we were trying to put together like a last minute like Christmas gift for somebody, and it was kind of like themed, right? Well, let's put a couple of things that relate to each other. It actually might have been for like a kind of like a white elephant, right? And I was like, ooh, okay, this package could really be sealed up really nicely if we could get like a Blu-ray of like Ocean's 13 or something like that. But we needed it that day. Where do you go to get a copy of Ocean's 13 or Ocean's 11 on Blu-ray, like day of, right? Yeah. You might try Walmart or Best Buy, and if it's a popular enough movie, if it's older, yeah, they might have it, but it is a crapshoot. You basically have to order it online and think ahead of time. There's no more impulse purchases of a specific movie anymore.
Exactly, and I'm a proponent of the newer 4K issues with or not issues, the releases with like the bit rate and stuff I've talked about, right, for my home theater system. A lot of people don't have that. I totally get it. If you got a TV and a sound bar, that works. That's just as fine. But my biggest concern, and this is something I've always dabbled in, Mike, is video games, ROMs and emulators, and actual owning the copies, right? Like backing up media, right? Games that aren't made anymore, they're thousands of dollars because people threw them away because they weren't thinking of it. What are we going to get to the point where companies need to, will there be possible legislation like you have to keep releasing physical media because you can't cut people out who don't have digital/streaming, even though it's everywhere? Preservation of media, right, in the future. If someone decides to delete something from the internet, like you mentioned Game of Thrones, the Starbucks coffee cup in one of the final episodes, remember that whole fiasco? Like, where do we find that? I found out this week as well, there's a copy of, or a version of Ace Ventura that was only edited for TV with scenes added in for TV, like on TBS, that are not available on DVD, VHS, or Blu-ray. So someone's had to go get these clips from these TV places and compile it into an online only version for fans. So yeah.
Well, Chris, don't worry. You just got to wait another probably 4 or 5 years, and then you can just ask a AI chatbot to hunt it down or just recreate it.
Yeah, can you make this scene? It's true, but that's just something I want. I mean, it's not a huge topic here, but it does bring up the thing, and my feelings on Spider-Man 2 was like, yes, I will pre-order it digitally, and I'm like, I think I just want to get it just in case, kind of there. But the other part of this is, obviously, with games that are already pre-downloaded, people can crack them and hack them. So leaks and spoilers are already out, Mike. So beware of anything articles related to Spider-Man 2. Avoid them if you can, if you want to go in as clean as you can. Because I only know, again, the first big gameplay footage we shared, a couple months ago. I'm not watching any other trailers or teasers for this to kind of go.
And we'll be giving first impressions for sure next week on the show. Yeah. But I'm not going to rush. I'm going to take my time. So hopefully we can kind of talk about the ending maybe in a couple weeks. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I really hope so. It'll be fun. Also on Friday, not other than Mario in this, my wife bought us tickets to go see the Taylor Swift movie. The Eras Tour movie, which is apparently breaking all sorts of records at the box office. So
yeah,
I will not get to play Spider-Man on Friday, even if I buy it. So we'll talk about it next Sunday for sure. Mike, were you able to watch the Monarch Legacy of Monsters trailer that Apple TV dropped this week yet? Because, boy, this is exciting.
I watched some teaser trailer about it. It must have been maybe just before we left on our trip.
Okay, this is a newer one. Because we talked about it in the news a couple weeks ago. I don't know if maybe it's a week you were out. But there's a new trailer for the series, and boy, does it not hold back actually having monsters in this series, despite the fact, a lesser probably streaming service would be like, yeah, just make it focus on the humans, not on the actual, Godzilla or the creatures.
Mm-hmm. It's very odd kind of being hyped for the series just because it's something that's kind of primarily only existed as feature films, but now it's going to be on TV. Mm-hmm. But like, it's not like I was super excited to watch them when they were on the big screen in the first place. Like, I kind of had to force myself to binge and watch them just so, like, when Godzilla finally fought King Kong and Mechagodzilla shows up, I guess I'd know what was going on, as if it would be so complicated, right? Mm-hmm. But like, yeah, weirdly enough, I don't know why I'm compelled to watch this.
Well, I think there's two things. They're trying, right? I mean, it's a Legendary, I believe, owns the rights to this, or Warner, whoever owns the rights to this, because it is literally everywhere, right? We have two Godzilla movies, one Kong Skull Island, Kong. We have an animated series, I believe, right? Kong or Skull Island that's been on Netflix recently. This came out, and then Monarch Legacy Monsters. So they're trying to do something with this, which is awesome, rather than just, hey, they're not doing the Freddy versus Jason or the Alien versus Predator thing, which is like a one-off and they go their own way. But this is Apple TV, and the thing with Apple TV series are they put real money and energy behind this, right? Like they got
the money.
Yeah, they're not half-ass in this, and you can kind of see, even if you don't listen to it, you can watch this. There's Godzillas, there's other aliens. There's a really cool thing which reminded me of the Godzilla '99 movie with the underground egg nests kind of going on here. There's some glowy orange eggs.
I'm kind of watching this now as we're chatting, and man, it's just like they're like, hey, can we afford to put this spider creature chasing somebody in the forest? Like, yeah, sure, we'll just go sell a couple more MacBooks. You'll be fine.
Yeah, okay, we're bringing back John Goodman. We've hired Kurt Russell and his son Wyatt Russell to play the same character. Like they are really kind of going out here. And one of the cool things about this is, and this is for us, is one of the showrunners or the maybe the writers, I forget, is Matt Fraction, who wrote, who writes comic books. Obviously, Hawkeye for Marvel, which is what,
Whoa, I didn't know Matt Fraction was involved. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. So it's like one of his passion projects when they announced it a couple of years ago. He was like building I would say dioramas for the show, like he could walk around in kind of thing. So Matt Fraction involved. So it's currently, we're not Rotten Tomatoes people, but it debuted at 92% right now, even though it's not out for another month and a half. So I've got some hype levels for this, Mike, to see these monsters kind of come through here.
The big question is, will I be able to convince my wife to watch it? Uh-huh. We'll find out. I'll just put it on and be like, what are we watching? I'll just let's find out if you like it.
We're just watching we're watching a show called Monarch. Is it about butterflies? It might be. There might be butterflies in here. We don't know. So, yep, absolutely comes out November 17th on Apple Plus. So get ready for that. A show I never finished the first season of, and it's not indicative of the quality. There's just a lot of show here because these are 40-plus minute episodes. I didn't expect that early on for an animated show. But Invincible, the season 2 trailer drops and teases a multiverse pretty early on. The villain literally just says, I had the ability to access every multiverse. And I'm like, okay, I wonder what he's going to be doing. I honestly don't know, because we are in the middle of another multiverse show with Loki. And we had The Flash earlier this year. And Rick and Morty's coming back in a week or two. So we are in we're going to be in multiverse burnout pretty soon, I feel. But Invincible seems to be going kind of all in on season 2 here, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, the first season was great. Chris, I know you read the comic books, so you know the story. You probably know how the first season ends, but it is pretty fun to see it animated to screen because it's very brutal and very crazy.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I said, it's not indicative. I just read the story, so I was like, it's hard to sit down for 40 minutes for these. But sometimes in the winter, I find more time because I'm not going outside and doing stuff. So I might be able to wrap it up because Invincible Season 2 comes to Prime on November 11th, Mike. So That's great. And I know, I think they were doing season 3 at the same time, so we probably won't have as long of a wait for season 3 for Invincible.
Yeah, and they had that like little secret special like drop. It was like a
Adam Eve.
like a mini. Yeah, it's like a mini-sode or mini-movie or
Yep.
something. I still need to catch that.
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. I think the stacked list of voice actors, this is going to be a show to watch.
And speaking of Amazon, we still need to check out Gen V as well. Maybe we'll like just wait till they're all out and binge them.
I'm not watching Gen V, but I'll let you do that. I'm against spin-off shows at this point, so I will let you watch Gen V. But I don't.
Come on. I'm guessing I can't sell you on the reboot of Frasier, which would be the reboot of a spin-off of
Well,
Cheers.
I tried to watch Frasier when I got Paramount Plus when it launched a couple years ago. Made it one episode in, and it's not for me, and I understand that. I have friends who love the show and live the show, and I that is awesome for them. But maybe if Seinfeld did a reboot series, maybe
I won't say this for your ears, Chris, because I know you're your own man. You like to watch what you like to watch, so I won't try to convince you. But I'll say this to the general audience out there: if you're watching any sort of television show or sitcom, especially like from the 90s, they are very much fit in to like the classic TV production cycle of pilot first, and then they write the rest of the show. And a lot of time those shows do not really find their groove until you're like in episode like 10 or 12. So never rely on the first episode, which we've been trained now in modern times that is everything has to go into that first episode. Yeah. So back in the day, a little different.
Well, absolutely. And I didn't drive it. It's like I had a conversation this week about Parks and Rec. The first season didn't do it for me. I know the first season sucks and the second season gets better. I just don't feel like investing the time. That's
a whole other thing. Talk about an ask for somebody. Like, hey, I know there's 1,000 things that you could watch, but I think I'd rather you watch 8 more episodes of Frasier, and then I'll think you start liking it.
Yeah,
I think I'll just scroll on my phone, unfortunately.
Yeah, that back when shows were 26 episodes a season, we need you to really buckle up for half a season before you enjoy it. But I feel the same way, and when talking about the Clone Wars TV show, I'm like, the show started for kids. The movie was for kids, and it gets more adult. So, a watch list is helpful for some stuff like that, right? Hey, this will help really get into it. But, yes. Back to it. Invincible comes out November 11th next month. So, hopefully.
We go from Invincible to Frasier. That's why you listen. That's why you listen to us.
Yeah, we get there. And again, if you like it, great. If you don't like it, even better. Have a good time. The Batman 2, Mike, this has kind of been quiet on the DC front lately, but the rumors are that Hush might be the main villain, and we reported this I feel like a year and a half ago, because there's the reporter in the first film has a name, and the character Hush is a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne, so all the stuff lines up that it could be it. Now, I will tell you, we're in an interesting little era of quote-unquote rumors, because there's nothing going on. There hasn't been anything going on with writers for 4 months before it was, alleviated. The actors are still on strike, so that's not in production. I feel people are just making shit up at this point to cover the actual lack of news coming out. To be honest, hey, we talked about Hush a year and a half ago. Let's bring it back up again, right? Because no one said anything about the Batman. So
yeah, that could be it. But also, the rumor does kind of, I feel like it makes sense if you're trying to predict it, right? Yeah. Matt Reeves is making the 20th Batman movie that's ever been made.
It's even more realistic than Christopher Nolan's Batman. Yeah. How much more lifelike can we make these movies?
Yeah. So it's just you can't really go back to the old roster. Well, you can, because he did with the Riddler, I guess. But I mean,
and the
Hush
Joker.
Hush really seems like a character that would fit into that universe. But yeah, I'm really curious what happens with these Reeves Batman movies now in the Gunn and Safran universe. Yeah. But I guess we'll see how much money the second Joker movie makes, and that might kind of predict if we get more fractured movies or not.
Yeah, I mean, again, with the Joker made $1 billion or something, right? Warner Brothers is a company for making movies, and we're gonna talk about the Joker actually. There's the sequel here with the new image from Todd Phillips. But yeah, absolutely, if it makes money, they're gonna hopefully greenlight it, right? We're gonna get more of it whether we like it or not. But Todd Phillips was sharing last week a 4-year anniversary since the Joker. It doesn't feel like it's been that long, if I'm going to be completely honest. Boy, did the pandemic do a number on us. But they have. It's also the 1-year anniversary until the second one comes out. So it's still just a hair under a year away for the Joker 2, with obviously Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker and Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn in this one. So I don't know what it's gonna do, and I'm very curious. Right, we've heard all those rumors. Is it a musical movie? What is it? And I want to see a trailer. I'm interested. They have me on a hook with this one, Mike.
Yeah, it's like how much life does this possible specific character and universe have? Right, it's almost like, is 2 movies it? Do we wrap up the story here and this is perfect? Do we keep it going? Is this gonna be like the Breaking Bad of the DC universe, where it's this amazing film? I mean, it's won awards, it's made money, it's what every movie studio wants their movie to do. I mean, as for the image itself, it's just Joaquin Phoenix just looking up while it's raining, and he's got some colorful umbrellas around him, so not much to take from this for sure. But yeah, I do often forget that this movie franchise that's burgeoning exists, and then some sort of grungy photo of these 2 actors shows up on the internet, and I go, oh yeah, that's right, they're making a sequel. Yeah,
they're very, 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 very hush on the sequel too, right? There's not a lot of details about this, so people like to speculate. So yes, the 2 non-DC EU or DCU movies are the only things with notes this week. I do know Aquaman is coming up. There's my favorite rumor is Jason Momoa is a lock to be Lobo. I'm like, no one's making contract deals while the actor strike is down. So quit putting that out there. But we're probably pretty close to ticket sales on that too. So we'll tell you guys when that happens, if you want to rush out and do it, or if you want to walk out in the middle of it like all the rumors suggest at this point. All right, let's shift some gears into Star Wars land a little bit before we have Ahsoka at the end of the show, but we're going to talk about the Acolyte TV show, the High Republic series, Mike. Right? This is prequels, to give you a little bit of era, 100 years or so before the prequels. I showed you a clip of the leaked trailer that was online.
Yes, it's a good thing I watched it when you sent it to me too.
Because is it down already? I don't. This link I put it. Oh, okay. So yeah, the Reddit removed by the Reddit's legal operations team. So I'm gonna have to remove this link. However, Mike, can you describe what you saw? Because I feel it is the absolute epitome of I'm like, this is what's gonna hook Mike into the show right here.
Yeah, well, it's cam footage for sure, but I was kind of impressed by the editing of the cam footage. It seemed like somebody out there found a couple different angles and kind of stitched them together so you could kind of watch the full trailer. But yeah, you do get a rousing moment at the end with a bunch of people turning on lightsabers of all different shades of colors. I swear it looked like I saw an orange one, which led me to believe I haven't really seen an orange lightsaber before. So I don't know where that's gone in the lexicon of Star Wars in a while. But the Acolyte, I'm curious about this High Republic era. That's for sure, because it's far enough removed to be its own thing, but also I feel like there's just so much big brain topics that you can talk about in Star Wars now. There's so many things being juggled. I am glad that I'm not Kathleen Kennedy, because I feel like it's got to be a tough job right now. What are you green lighting? What are you focusing on? What are you putting energy into? I would have assumed if I was in charge, you can Andor, or you don't give it any sort of resources and just let it die on the vine so we can all concentrate on the Mandalorian era. But lo and behold, the show's amazing, so it's well, now I don't want that era to go away. But they're planning the Acolyte, with this High Republic era that they already kind of pre-announced with novelizations a year or two ago.
Oh no, it's been 5. They're on phase 3 of the High Republic already.
Oh wow,
they've been in it pretty hardcore for a hot minute.
Who is it? James Mangold that's supposed to be doing that
the 3
Messiah
movies
of the Jedi, the very first year 0 kind of Star Wars. I guess.
There's the 3 movies, right? The year 0, the episode 10, and the Dave Filoni stuff. So yeah, it's
just,
literally all like trying to build a timeline out of your products whenever you're not consistently moving forward.
Yeah, obviously the big shot of all the lightsabers is cool.
Yeah,
I like lightsabers; they're fun and cool. But like, they gotta find it's hard to find new and interesting things to do with lightsabers. I've noticed recently. Like we mentioned one thing that happened in an episode of Ahsoka a couple weeks ago where they just handled the lightsaber a little bit differently. But I'm hoping that we get something. Get something a little new and creative.
What I like about the High Republic era is it's not the prequels where it's all legal stuff and the Jedi are now like police enforcers, right? When I read the High Republic books, like there are hundreds and thousands of Jedi doing cool stuff across the universe, and they lean back into the notion that like Jedi have like each Jedi has like a different power, right? Like like someone can like you've played the Jedi Fallen Order games, right? Like where Cal can like touch something and feel like a ghost or like what happened here previously kind of ability, like it's one of his abilities. So like they always like they're gonna have a lot more unique skills, and there's gonna be more than just humanoid Jedis with that. Now the other part about this trailer is the first part, and I only sent Mike this one clip before I send the full one, is we have a pretty cool, like I guess more like a hand-to-hand fight scene in a bar earlier on with Carrie-Anne Moss and I believe one of the other main leads of the show. So I feel this leans into, there's also a lot more aliens in this as well. So it's leaning, I wouldn't say away from Andor, but it's got like the Andor sensibilities of the locales and stuff like that. But it is not, hey, we're just humans, right? Like the Republic is xenophobic and only wants humanoids in their organization, and this was hundreds of years ago before that, so they can actually lean on maybe some alien species, as you've heard my complaints before with that. So I'm excited to see the Acolyte. I like that. Again, you mentioned the last thing on that is it's not touched by anything. It doesn't have to connect to a movie. It doesn't have to pick up where anything else is. If you've read the books, you'll probably get some more stuff, from the High Republic here. But like, it's not like, hey, we have to fit in a window and not touch the start of the beginning, right? Like we can do whatever we want here at the end of it. So we'll see that. The next couple bits of news we're going to talk about, one is Star Wars, but the interesting parts about all this is Marvel/Disney/Star Wars has filed copyright office notes. And if you're familiar, when you do projects, you have to file a copyright to secure a copyright so people can't do the exact same thing later, right? So a lot of news dropped out of these copyright notes, including stuff for Skeleton Crew, Mike, the Jude Law series that's coming up for Star Wars.
That's the not Mark Webb, the other Spider-Man director, John Watts.
Yeah, right? John Watts. Yeah, John Watts.
Okay,
I think at least an episode or two, right? I think they did 2 times 3. Yeah, but the estimated arrival is actually January 2024. It could be a placeholder, saying the first of the year, but that kind of makes it the next Star Wars property, right? We're kind of out of Star Wars for a little bit, and we don't know when the next one is. But this copyright filing seems to indicate January 24. And with all these comes a little synopsis, Mike. So in the first episode of Skeleton Crew, we're introduced to 4 kids who make a mysterious discovery on their seemingly safe home planet and get lost in a strange and dangerous galaxy. Finding their way home, meeting unlikely allies and enemies will be a greater adventure than they ever imagined. So, do you feel that this will be connected to the Ahsoka show or the Folie movie, or do you think it's going to be standalone? Because it takes place in the Folie Mandalorian era.
I would think it ladders up, just because I don't remember where I remember catching this, but it was like an interview with Jon Favreau, where he was kind of talking about when he was on set for one of the Spider-Man movies. I think maybe it was Far From Home, and he was just chatting with John Watts, and John Watts just had this idea of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool, if like these kids were like runaways or something like that. He was basically just kind of like pitching it one off. And if you're pitching it to Jon Favreau, who can, connect you with Kathleen Kennedy, but also I'm sure John Watts does not need Jon Favreau to knock on that door anyway. Right. But basically this was just an idea that could have been placed literally anywhere, right? It didn't have to be rooted in the Mando timeline, but it seemed like, hey, let's put it there for a reason. So my guess is if all of this Filoni stuff is supposed to culminate in a big feature film. Yeah, I would think like scoop up all of these Disney Plus series that's existing at the same time and ladder up to a big feature film that you can make $1 billion off of.
Yeah, and I hope people, I don't think this is a spoiler for Ahsoka, but if you've not seen Ahsoka, use the time codes. But, there is another universe in Ahsoka, right? Like another galaxy? Not universe, galaxy. Is this part of that trajectory? Is this somehow intertwined with this other galaxy, right? Kind of thing. Because they are lost in a strange and dangerous galaxy. Is it their own or is it another one, right? Is it tied to that somehow? Because obviously Jude Law is a Jedi in this show, obviously undercover. So could he have a connection to Ahsoka, who's been around the galaxy, right? Maybe reconnecting with Jedi, or hiding Jedi. So I feel it could easily be connected to those and bring it together. And then, I'm interested to see the kids, again, what their abilities are, what it is. This is a very interesting movie. We don't get a lot of kid-focused stuff in Star Wars right now, right? With the live action. So very big question mark. But I'm excited to hear that they have some stuff on the plate. And it's going to be probably dropping sooner than later. Let's shift to Marvel for almost the rest of the show. Almost the rest of the show. We have one more. We have Ahsoka at the end, and then the rest is Marvel. But Werewolf by Night, the color version, Mike, is coming on Friday, October 20th on Disney Plus. Just a different version. You go in there, select Werewolf by Night. You can watch the original black and white or the color version. And you have a little trailer in the show notes here. And, some people are like, well, why would you do that to the original? The black and white was awesome and powerful, went up to color at the end. I'm like, yeah, but when you look at this color, guess what? It looks like old movie coloring. It's not like, hey, we just turned off the color to make the movie. Like, it looks like there's some other stuff going on here to give it that vintage horror effect. And I think we've talked about that before. So I think you're watching it currently, but...
yes, I'm clicking through it now. Yeah, because all of the colors are very vibrant and saturated, but you still have a lot of that grain and more specifically like the color bloom.
Yes, exactly.
As well.
Yeah, it looks like when you look at something like it looks like it's reflecting off a lens onto film, like they used to make old horror movies with, and you see that kind of glow, and then the you see chromatic aberrations, right? Like the blue and red lines around some of it that shouldn't be there if they were making it perfect. So I think it could be, again, some digitally added effects, but I don't think it's a cheap cash in. Not that there would be a cash in. It's free on Disney Plus if you have Disney Plus, but it's going to give me a really good reason to rewatch this at the end of the day. Cause I wouldn't, after Halloween, I don't, I'm not into watching spooky stuff. So I think this will be a fun rewatch a year later.
Yeah. I agree.
I wish they did more of these one shots. I know we're probably not going to get them, but I thought they were really cool while we did that. All right, so back into Agatha the Darkhold Diaries. Copyright Office revealing dates and more. Agatha Darkhold Diaries, we are looking at almost a year away. September 19th, 2024, Mike, is the estimated debut date for this show.
Yeah. And I think we'll probably dive in a little bit deeper to like release dates in general for Marvel projects here when we get to Daredevil Born Again. Yep. But it just seems like everything is still shifting and moving. Nothing is set in stone and concrete. And I'm going to go ahead and just say this is just how Hollywood is always going to be for now. Like, it never benefits anybody really to set a concrete release date for anything anymore. Yeah, if you're as a studio as a whole, you can kind of squat on a release date and just say it's an unreleased Marvel movie coming out, and then DC will pick a different weekend, right? But yeah, I do not hold my breath with release dates anymore. And also, like we were talking about at the top of the show, there's so much stuff out there to watch. I don't really have to sit around and wait and anticipate for anything anymore. Any weekend, I turn on any streamer that I have, and there's something brand new. So it's a feast out there right now. Even after like a pandemic and a strike, there's still new stuff coming out. So
exactly, and that's I now all this stuff came out before the Daredevil stuff, just so everyone knows, because you're hearing it as we talk through it, but this came out about a week before. One of the interesting things that you mentioned is, these dates changing and shifting, but, we are seeing oh my gosh, who was the old CEO of Disney who was like Chapek. We're seeing the Chapek stuff be pushed, really, right? because he was like content. They're going to keep our streamers. Well, he's being sued for lying about how many streamers were actually on the service. So can we really trust that? So hopefully they are taking the quality over quantity approach. And all the stuff that we were promised for this year under the Chapek era has been shifted, delayed. Really, we also have 2 strikes and just everything else. So I'm okay with waiting as well. But anyway, Darkhold Diaries, September of next year, just in time for spooky season next year. Mike, that sounds right for this, doesn't it? That sounds like a really good release date. In the first episode, we see Agatha finally break out of a spell she has been trapped in. She can't wait to go back to her old murderous ways, only to find she is powerless. The only way forward for her is to embark on a perilous quest to get her powers back with the help of an unlikely friend or two. So, looks like she's going to be dealing with the fallout of, the multiverse of madness, getting her powers, finding out she has no powers, and becoming back along the way. Yeah. Do you think this is going to be another heel turn character, Mike? Because they obviously, her old murderous ways, they wouldn't make a murderer the main focus of a show.
I mean, everyone really loved her. I mean, from the brief flashback we got of her origin, it's kind of one of those misunderstood villains of just like, well, if they weren't a dick to, if they didn't try to murder her, right, I think she wouldn't have turned evil. Hopefully they use this as an opportunity to tell a really interesting story of the origin of magic in the Marvel universe, right? We got a little bit of that Doctor Strange stuff from his first movie, but they kind of just said like magic's kind of always been here, and we've been the protector of all this in our like sacred, mountain hideaway. But like, how did it get to like Salem, Massachusetts, right? Like, obviously was not locked down if just some pilgrims could start messing around with it,
what are the different magic levels, right, and how do they work, kind of thing. So I absolutely agree. I think to me they're trying to Loki the character a little bit, right? How Loki was a villain, and then people really latched onto him, and then like, okay, well, we'll turn him. But hopefully they just don't do it in her next appearance. Like, maybe give her a little bit of time before she's like, oh, I now see the errors of my ways. I can be a force for good. But obviously we love Catherine Hahn. The show was great. They're doing the name things possibly on purpose. We don't know. A lot of questions here, but it sounds like we're going to be getting it next year, Mike. I'm guessing New York Comic Con's going on right now. There's no movie news coming out of there. They announced 3 more Ultimate Universe comic books, though, if you're interested in that. But no movie news. So I'm going to guess that if they go to San Diego Comic Con next year, Mike, if that's still a thing, we will get news. But if not, I really feel we're going to need a fall... one of those big Disney videos where they do like 2-hour videos and announce all their stuff, right? Coming up.
Those were the days. Those were fun. Yeah, I remember those.
They put some time and energy into it, and everyone felt hyped together. So we'll cross our fingers. Another show I forgot even entirely existed was Spider-Man Freshman Year, the animated show.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
The ETA for this is November 2nd, 2024. Which is very soon after Agatha Darkhold Diaries, but it's animated and in an alternate universe, right? It says here, Spider-Man Freshman Year, in which Peter Parker's life, while getting ready for his high school orientation, is forever changed by events that send him on a journey like none other before. In the first episode, we discovered the new era of Spider-Man begins here. Like, this is where we learned that, he's going to be under the tutelage of Norman Osborn. All his suits are different. The villains are going to be a little different, right? So... it's not going to be set in the MCU, more of a multiverse scenario. So I don't care that it comes after Darkhold Diaries, but boy, they really got to sell us on this show, right, to watch it. What does it mean? Is there any consequences in this show, Mike, at the end of the day? Or is it just a fun little thing we're doing?
Well, I mean, we always talk about the battle between Sony and Marvel all the time, right? And how they seem to have a symbiotic relationship. Pun intended there with symbiotic.
Spider-Man 2 on Friday.
But yeah, it does make me wonder, like, if the show is really, really popular and kind of breaks away from just like the 2D animated, like, spectacular Spider-Mans of the world, if they can elevate it in a way and maybe convince a broader audience of like, oh, this is like a Spider-Verse TV show in a way, right? You don't have to wait for, I don't know, some random Amazon Prime Spider-Man show, right, to pop up on there. We got the goods over here. That gives them more leverage with Sony, that's for sure, of just like, hey, we're basically making Spider-Man every way you can that you can't. So, maybe we're starting to squeeze you a little bit more. At least that's how I think about it. But yeah, as outside of that, it seems like old Disney Plus strategy to me, right? It doesn't seem like if this is a decision that they would be making right now, brand new.
Yeah.
Seems like something that's stuck around. It's already been in production, so they got to put it out there. It'll be one of those things where we'll see how it goes, and then they'll move forward, maybe.
Well, and maybe Sony's footing some of the bill, right? And that makes it easier to swallow on streaming shows when someone else is doing that. Because a sequel series, Spider-Man sophomore year, is already in development. So, you know, do you feel like they're going to commit to this and kind of do a little 4-season thing? They're just going to do the 2, drop it off. I don't know, but hopefully, you know, it's more than just fun that we actually get to see something kind of spin out of this a little bit into the multiverse at large. Maybe he pops up in Kang Dynasty or Secret Wars as a little animated dude. I don't know, but we'll keep you guys posted as any more of that comes along. Now into some meat and potatoes of the show, Mike. This is the biggest news I think we had in a long time, and this was Daredevil Born Again. And if you've not heard, the writing team and directors were let go from Daredevil in September in a quote-unquote creative reboot for the series. Now, mind you, this is not scoopers, this is not rumors, this is from THR directly with interviews from people at Marvel, Mike. So this is not like speculation, this is what we have as fact today.
Yeah, now, and also, this isn't, like Chris was saying, this isn't just like a rumor mill article like drummed up on some random like MCU like Instagram fan page, right? This is a fully detailed just expose on Marvel television at a whole. And the biggest, juiciest news for sure is coming from Daredevil Born Again, because it's the biggest project happening over there, and the biggest project being essentially rewritten for the most part. They have said that they are going to try to keep some of the stuff that they've already filmed, but they are totally changing strategic direction, not just with the show, with the whole landscape of Daredevil Born Again and all of their TV shows.
Yeah, so first and foremost, we'll talk about Daredevil Born Again, because that seemed to be I would say maybe the catalyst for everything, right? Yeah. And that it was, in fact, a legal procedural way different than the Netflix version of Daredevil, the 3 seasons that we saw. And they even said that you don't even see Matt Murdock in the Daredevil costume until episode 4 even of an 18-episode series. So,
and that's pretty rough. I mean, that's something that you could kind of get away with the very first time you walk Daredevil out onto a streamer, right? Because he technically did not have his red devil costume until the last portion of the first season of Netflix, but he was in like a proto suit earlier than that, right? But we already saw him in his yellow suit in She-Hulk. I don't want him out of the suit again, right? You know, he's got to be Daredevil in episode 1 at some point.
Well, the show is Daredevil. If the show was Matt Murdock Born Again, right, or something like that, maybe even better. Like, hey, we're gonna focus on Matt Murdock, but we're watching superhero shows. We don't want to not see the superhero. And he was in, again, you mentioned She-Hulk, right? For at least 2 episodes. He was in Spider-Man Far From Home, or No Way Home. Like, we're not hiding him. We know who he is. We know what he's going to be doing. Like, you don't need to beat around the bush.
Yeah. And I don't hate the idea of it being a legal procedural either. I think that would be fun as long as the legal cases are competent and intriguing, because in She-Hulk, right, you could kind of play tongue-in-cheek with some of the court cases because it was supposed to be comedic and kind of silly and funny, and you could kind of just hand-wave away some of the things. Like, that's not how – I'm not a lawyer, but I know that that's not how a courtroom works. So hopefully they'll get a little bit grittier in the courtroom with Daredevil.
And the focus of She-Hulk wasn't necessarily that she was a lawyer, but that she was a woman who unexpectedly got Hulk powers and is dealing with that rather than the court cases. And Matt Murdock's obviously a lawyer. Like, that's his whole livelihood depends on that. So absolutely. I'm going to read off. I'm going to jump to the bottom. So the synopsis that also came out with the creative or the copyright stuff is that rivals Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk try to leave behind their darker alter egos to serve the people of New York, only to have their past catch up to them. In the first episode of the series, we are reintroduced to the world of Daredevil. And then also in January 2025 is an estimated release window. Now, this was the week before this news article came out, which means it was after all the shakeup has already happened, Mike, right? So I feel they have a path to get this to this synopsis and to this window without everything else going on. But we're going to talk about it. One of the things I've heard from someone, and you can corroborate this, Mike, is that in Marvel, in their TV shows, Secret Invasion, we talked about this, not impressed, right? At the end of the day, it just was a show. It wasn't that good. We can tell there were reshoots. We can tell where the flaws were. The cracks were on the surface for once. And the biggest problems on the show that there were movie executives vying for control of the series behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, that was the word going around town out here whenever you would, meet up with somebody for coffee or dinner. That's just the vibe out there of just like there seems to be just a totally different structure that is running Marvel television that is so unlike the rest of the way Hollywood has been making television.
Yes.
Now, obviously, there's two schools of thought here, right? You can't punish somebody necessarily for trying to think different and move differently, right? The MCU is this big interconnected universe, right? And they got there from being relatively unorthodox. Nobody else was doing that out there in cinema, and obviously the big inner working gears that built that universe on the on the backside of production was revolutionary to crank out that stuff. So I get it. You're going to start making TV. Let's try to port over this movie success into the production of television. I mean, essentially it's all cameras and scripts, right? Just in different quantities, right? So I get that. So I don't blame them for attempting something, right? But this is what you do when things don't work out. You got to shiv it and pivot, and now they're going to they're trying to create a more traditional streamline of just showrunners, producers, and writers, when before it was just these executives kicking down the door, kind of waving their proverbial Hulk fist around.
But movies are different, right? You have you only have a couple of names attached to it. A lot of executive producers are like, hey, I helped with did something this. You can't cause you lose a through line, and that's kind of what we have here. Marvel Disney's overhauling these because there is no creative through line through this, right? It's traditionally been in the movie, you have a writer, the writer turns in the script to the director films the movie, and then they get to the editing, and then the higher ups at Marvel fix the film in post, if you will, right? Like, hey, some of this didn't work, we're gonna rejigger it. Well, you can't do that with TV, right? You don't film your episodes in order all the time. If you make a change in episode 6, will that affect something you did in episode 1 or vice versa? So they really, the writer to director to post doesn't work in television like it does in movies, and that's something that you mentioned. They're bringing in TV showrunners, not film executives, to make this work from start to finish, rather than have 3 very siloed, non-talking, non-connected points along the way.
Yeah, I'm just glad that somebody over there has noticed that it's not working, right? And there's in this THR article that there's a graph that shows watch time breakdown for all of the Marvel Disney Plus series, and you can see the watch time diminish basically chronologically almost for as these shows were released. So just the appetite for these Marvel shows has just plummeted as they have started to put them out, because I think they're starting to come to the hypothesis that the quality is just dipping, right? Well, I mean, obviously, there's always like those minorities that are going to complain that they're making a show, about a woman or whatever, right? But Captain Marvel was the same thing, but that movie still made like $1 billion, right? So I don't think it has anything to do with, I'm sure some crazy person on YouTube is probably screaming about like the woke mind virus is destroying Marvel. Like that's not it. It's just you got to increase the quality of your stories.
WandaVision is about Wanda. Literally, like a woman, and it's one of the better shows, right? Loki is about a villain. It's great. Say what you will about Captain America, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, whatever. Yeah, the Falcon Winter Soldier. It still has some good stuff. But like when you get to the point you're making too much content and you're doing it in a wrong way, where everyone is like the writers are getting shuffled out, the directors are getting shuffled out, the producers are fighting over the edits, you're gonna get shit at the end of it, right? Too many cooks in the kitchen is just a recipe for disaster. One of the other things here, other than having full-time TV execs attached to these rather than film executives, which is a great idea, is that they're leaning into the multi-season shows, Mike, and away from limited series formats. Because what happened at the end, I'm going to use Secret Invasion as an example because fresh in my mind. At the end of Secret Invasion, we had literally 20 minutes to wrap up the whole show. right? Because it was a limited series and it was going to be done. So we got a very shitty battle with these two Super Skrulls, if you will, that happened so quick and so fast, and it's not very satisfying. It's not fulfilling, and you're like, well, where are they going to end up next? Do we know? I don't know. So why do I care about these characters? Will they ever appear again? So leaning into multi-season shows and away from this will help build those characters up over time and help us get to know them better, rather than just a couple scenes here and there.
Yeah, it seemed like they were basically like, let's make limited series shows, and if they pop off enough, we'll make another season of it, which I feel like is just not a good approach going into it. Traditionally, when you pitch TV shows in Hollywood, you pitch them the first season, and then you also pitch where it could possibly go in the future because they want a catalog here. And this brings it to a whole, just as streaming in general. It seems like the last, like, God, I don't even know, 10 years of streaming has just been get as many subscribers as possible any way you can do it as fast as possible. We have all of this influx of money, so spray and pray, make as much as you can. We don't care how long any of it lasts, but now you end up with these extremely lackluster catalogs, right? And we're starting to see Netflix start to buy properties from other streamers. Like, you can watch not The Last of Us. There's something else pretty premium that you can watch on Netflix right now that's like an HBO show, which is pretty wild. But what's going to happen when Netflix wants to do that? Like, who's going to license like 3 seasons of the Santa Clarita Diet from Netflix when there's no ending to it, right? Yeah. I'm not going to, like, I wouldn't do that if I was a streamer. Yeah. Also, I really like the Santa Clarita Diet, so I hope somehow that they can make more of it and wrap up the show.
Right.
But, like, there's nothing of quality for them to sell out there into the world. So I feel like this is motivation for Hollywood to be like, okay, if it doesn't work, cancel it after 1 season. But if it's got enough gas in it, at least give us a proper ending so you have something to sell off to like a Roku TV or a Pluto or something.
We are in an era where you literally could just do a one-off 40-minute episode of stuff and wrap up your stories, and no one's doing it. And I'm like, you know how much good publicity you would get for doing that for those fans? Like, hey, we're gonna make just a one-off episode to wrap up the show for these people. So you can, like you mentioned, sell those packaged deals at the end of the day. One of the quotes here, and this is huge, is and maybe I think we've even mentioned it before, is that these TV series, quote, should work beyond the fact that it ties into other projects, or if they're going to be a movie, or even set up an Avengers film, right? Like, you shouldn't have shows that just exist because they're going to tie into another project, or hey, we need to do a show here because they're going to be in a movie later. Like WandaVision set up Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. There's a little bit of a, obviously time gap in there because of delays and stuff like that, but that's what it did. But that's good. There shouldn't be, like, I feel the Falcon Winter Soldier, that's been several years now. We're getting Captain America 4. We should be doing more with those characters in the meantime, right? Like, are you gonna go back and rewatch that before you go watch that movie? I'm not.
No,
I'm
not.
Like there should be more to be done with these things, right? And like, obviously there are complaints about that show. Maybe if they listened to it and did a second series, they could fix some of those problems before they get into the movie, right? So you're not left with I wouldn't say like a bitter taste, but like I didn't really care too much for that. How's this gonna tie off? So I'm very excited for this, that they've taken this approach and did it. Now, I will say the writing team, I believe the directors are getting executive producer credit on Daredevil Born Again, by the way. So it's not like they're just fired unceremoniously last month and a half ago, whenever it was. So they are still getting credit for it, but it is good that people, or at least Marvel higher ups, whether it's Kevin Feige, whether it's Bob Iger, whoever it is over there, they have another team of producers too, are saying, hey, we've got problems. Where are the problems, and how can we fix them now going forward? It does not give me too much, hope for, I would say, honestly, if I'm going to be honest, the Agatha series and Ironheart and Echo, because those were done before this. So I don't know when we'll start seeing the changes. Mike. Do you think they're going to announce new things and get rid of some things to help facilitate this? Like, what's the next step for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like just ultimately this phase of Marvel will be kind of known as a larger kind of like Thor: The Dark World kind of Age of Ultron phase of like, you know, they went bigger, so when you go big, you can have just as big problems to match your ambitions, right? So I'm glad it's happening now and not later, right? You can't biff Secret Wars, right? You can't build up, like, there's not a lot of big classic comic book storylines left, right? They seem to be targeting all of the big splashier, you know, stories that all of the comic book nerds are wanting to see, right? There's other ones that you can do, but they're, you know, they're a little bit smaller, they're a little less well known, like something like Annihilation or something like that. But once they do Secret Wars, there's going to be a huge catastrophic pivot, so they gotta nail it if they want their billions and trillions of dollars to keep flowing in.
Right. Yeah, so hopefully, again, Daredevil Born Again, if it hits January 2025, that'll be our first show. But, you know, I feel we're in phase 5 now, Mike, I believe. Phase 5 and 6 of Marvel are going to be dragged out through maybe 2030, a little longer than we anticipated, to backfill or to brace out the content, but also maybe fix some of the quality issues along the way. So if anything, Disney's got money to throw at it, and so does Marvel, so hopefully they do and do it right. So woohoo. All right, so in the meantime, The Marvels is our next movie. Tickets are now on sale for this, by the way, Mike, if you hadn't got your tickets yet. So you can go get your tickets to The Marvel. The newest trailer / they didn't do a full trailer, they did like a minute thing. It teases a cameo / friend of Captain Marvel's at the end of it. Like, I called somebody and then it didn't show who it was. So I'm pretty excited to see maybe who makes a cameo in this. So, again, this is like an hour 45, so I'm pretty excited to see this kind of short jaunt of a film and see how it works. After this is Deadpool 3, still for May, if the actor strike maybe wraps up in time. So, we'll cross our fingers and see with that. And then after that, I believe is I think you mentioned Brave New World. So we've got a interesting 2024 lined up. So Marvel's coming in November. Tickets now on sale. You guys may have noticed our thumbnail this week has some classic Marvel movie characters in it. And this is where some early rumors, well before all this other news came out, was dropped here a couple weeks ago. But we're going to talk about the Avengers Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. And first off, the rumor for Kang Dynasty is that the plot is similar to Avengers Infinity War, with the Avengers taking on the Council of Kangs. I mean, it's currently unknown which writers are working on this film, as, you know, the people have like, oh, they fired Jeff Loveness and stuff because we didn't like Ant-Man Quantumania, but also it was a writer strike, so no writers could really work, so we don't know where that is. But the next part is the Avengers Secret Wars, Mike, and the rumor for this movie is that the TVA sends in a group of collected heroes to defeat Kangs. And this team is led by Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool, which would be wild.
That is a dream comic book, like, one-off trade crossover, right? I mean, that trio, that's something you buy and put on your shelf, and it's just like, I'm gonna pull that out every couple of years and read that, because it was just such a fun jaunt seeing all those characters interact together. I saw this news last week when we put it in the show notes, and it's hard not to think about it while I've been watching Loki, right? Of just being like, okay, maybe the TVA does get bolstered, because we kind of all thought that the TVA and the time stream and everything, basically the fallout from season 1 of Loki was going to be so much bigger and so much more widespread by now, and it really hasn't been. It seems to still be located primarily in Loki's universe. So I would love to see the TVA branch off and do more, because they're so interesting, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the, we'll talk, we need to talk about Loki, kind of explain the TVA, a little bit. But it sounds like, this is what you do, right? If you're going to send off all your historical stuff, the MCU phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stuff before the MCU, you're going to send all these actors off before you recast them. This sounds like a dream come true in this movie, if I'm going to be completely honest. And if you spend the money, you've already brought Tobey Maguire back for Far From Home, right? You've proven you can get him. You're bringing Hugh Jackman back for Deadpool 3. You've proven you can get him. Ryan Reynolds, I don't think he's going to play Deadpool much longer, right? He's been successful with his 2 movies and a third coming up. Put him in here, you send him off as well. So I'm very, very excited for this. If true, and how can we, what does it mean at the end of the day? I guess my question is, we've talked about this: who's going to live, who's going to die, and what does that quote unquote all new, all different Marvel look like post Secret Wars? At the end of the day, I would love to, to me, I'm selfish, Mike. I would love to get Wesley Snipes back for a Blade cameo in there, simply because we've had nothing from Blade announced since we heard the announcement 4 or 5 years ago. That Mahershala Ali was going to be Blade, so I think he'd be fun to get him in there. What if we got Dolph Lundgren as the Punisher, right? Bring him back in from 1990. He's out selling, I don't know, probably crypto stuff on commercials right now. It was something I saw earlier. But again, the minds run wild. This would be fun. So hopefully, we currently don't know who the writers are working on for this film, but hopefully, we know Marvel's heating up their search for the Fantastic Four writers. Probably the X-Men writers. Oh, they're Fantastic Four. Probably heating up for the X-Men writers, and maybe they can really bring this together at the end of it. So we'll keep you guys posted what we hear. We're going to jump into Deadpool real fast. I mentioned Taylor Swift at the top of the show. The rumor 2 weeks ago was that Taylor Swift may have a role in Deadpool 3 after being spotted with both Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds and his wife Blake Lively and the director/producer Sean Levy at I believe a sports ball game a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, Taylor Swift, she is the moment right now, right? Her movie. I always want to say movie like in quotes because it's like a movie. But
it's a concert movie, yeah.
Yeah, it made like nearly $100 million opening weekend. Like she needed any more money,
yeah,
right? And like she's at these football games next to celebrities all the time. Looks like she's having a good time. She seemingly is dipping her chicken fingers in ranch. I mean, that feels pretty down to earth for a megastar. But yeah, like it makes sense. It didn't work for the Cats movie. The Taylor Swift bump wasn't enough there. But I got to imagine in Deadpool it would be a welcomed cameo.
Well, I think at the same time, I don't know if the levels for this were as high as they are right now, Mike, for Taylor Swift. But she's always rumored to be Dazzler, a mutant who has the ability to create light/energy beams from sound vibrations and singers. She's always played as like a glittery glam 80s singer in the comic book. So, sure, why not? I would not be upset if they did it. I would not be upset if they didn't do this. Does that make sense? At the end of the day, I'm like, if it gets Deadpool more tickets sold because they got Taylor Swift, they got Brad Pitt for Deadpool 2 for a second. So I mean, there's always opportunities to don't underestimate the influential abilities of Ryan Reynolds right there. So, yes. All right, we're at the end of the show where we're going to talk about Loki and Ahsoka. So if you've not seen the first 2 episodes of Loki or the entire series of Ahsoka, please go away now. We're just going to talk full spoilers. I don't think we need to mince any words here and just get it out of the way, because obviously if you're listening to the show, you'll probably watch these shows as well. If not, that's fine. Like I said, this way, but the time comes in here. But before we begin, the first 4 episode runtimes for Loki were revealed. Obviously, episode 1 was 45 minutes, 39 without credits. Episode 2 was 49 minutes, 44 without credits. It's getting even longer next coming week with episode 3 is 53 minutes, 48 without. And episode 4 is 48 minutes, 45 without. These are pretty good runtimes. I like these. They don't dip towards the low 30s like the other shows did. So
yeah, it felt solid. If you're going to be producing kind of like a high budget, not science fiction, but it is kind of science fiction, I guess, action show. If you're dipping into the 30s, there better be some bombastic stuff happening on the screen, right? Your budget better be going somewhere. Right. I feel like, does that mean episode 3 is going to be a little bit more of a thinker? Yeah. I don't know, but I just binged the first 2 episodes this morning, and one thing that I forget, but I was reminded in the trailer, and I just love seeing it. The production design of this show is just worlds above anything else Marvel is doing maybe outside of that first season of WandaVision.
Yeah.
Right? There's just so much love happening on the screen. It just does not feel like you're putting characters in front of like a slap together set, or you're putting characters in front of a green screen and putting in things there later. It feels like they're really reacting to the stuff around them. I mean, I adore that like time puffy spacesuit that Mobius had to put on, and it had that gigantic corrugated tube on the back of it. It did not need to be that big. There was no feasible reason it had to be that huge, but it was just so unique and like, why not?
It has Tomorrowland vibes from like Disney, like the TVA does. Like, hey, this is what Tomorrowland would be if Walt Disney still expanded that. So the TVA feels like that. You want to know a fun fact about production? I'll tell you. I read today.
I do.
So Sylvie wears some acid wash jeans, right? When she's in the 70s, they cannot reproduce the same pair of acid wash jeans exactly over and over again. It's impossible, right? Because it's all about time and acid. So they actually printed her acid wash jeans, so she would still have the look of the era that she's in. I think it's 82, right? While maintaining that outfit look every time she's on scene.
Oh my God!
So
See, that's what I'm talking about. I feel like Loki is truly one of the only Marvel Disney Plus shows that is just firing on all cylinders, right? The performances are great. I love the character interactions. I love like just the small little moments. It truly feels like maybe an executive barged into this show and took over, right? If it happened to the other shows, I don't see why it couldn't have happened to this one. But maybe this show was just lucky that the executive that barged in was actually talented, right? Or the creator was able to have a better relationship with them and maybe tamper down some of the big wig ideas. But I don't know why, but this one is working. And I wish, after getting back into Loki, after enjoying 2 episodes of season 2, my opinion of everything else Marvel has done has just gone down even more, because I was like, well, it's been a while since I've watched the other stuff. Maybe I'm being too critical of these other things. Maybe I should just lighten up. But no, I'm back in the season 2 of Loki, and like, this is how it should be. This is supposed to be what premium television feels like.
Well, I say it helps because we've had literally 15 years of Loki, right? Like the character Loki, we know him for 15 years. You can't rush 15 years of development in 6 episodes, right, of other shows. And that is really, I think that comes across because we know what makes him tick. He knows what makes him tick. In the last episode 2, there's the interrogation scene, and he's like calling out, like, you've killed people. You took, you took New York hostage trying to defeat the world. You're a bad, evil person. He's like, you know what? Maybe I am a bad, evil person. So like, we have that history, and it really kind of helped with that. I also really enjoyed that the first episode just picks up and goes, right? It starts with him being chased by the TVA from the end of the first season, or in the first season, because he was in the back in the history, the past of the TVA. So I'm glad there wasn't like, hey, we need to slow things down for you and re-explain the world. They just went for it, and you're like, yep, he's being pulled between times. He's meeting Kiwi Kwan's OB, who's a fun addition to this show.
Oh, great character.
Really, really fun. His little, I don't know the guy's name. He was listening to the same book on tape that Moon Knight was listening to, by the way.
He was?
Yeah, it's the same one. What's his name?
My wife and I call him Pillboy because he played a character called Pillboy in The Good Place. So
there it
he's
is.
just Pillboy to us now.
Yeah. So Pillboy, yeah, he's got like that. He's getting more to do, right? The obsession over that. Again, I love the McDonald's scene. The scene in '80s McDonald's, Mike, throw me back, to that.
The reproduction was great. The very loosely inspired real world crossover of that Loki sweet and sour sauce makes a little bit more sense now, because I didn't realize it was going to be such a big. I mean, Mobius was really doing a good job promoting McDonald's. He went on and on about the quality of the meal that he was having.
Between that and key lime pie, he was eating that whole episode, man.
Yeah. I would love that they do something. Like, if they went to all of that effort of building that McDonald's, it would be great if it explodes or something, right? Or there's some sort of shootout that happens inside of there with, like, the TVA, or maybe Kang or something along those lines.
Yeah.
That would be great. They've done a good job so far setting up the stakes of what they're trying to do with this season. The timeline is going nuts, but then they also, those militants also pruned a bunch of the timeline.
They bought some time, for that.
Yeah, so I guess that buys them some time because it'll probably still be an issue when it comes back. I love it that they're like calling it like this big device, like a giant loom, because that's kind of what it is. And like, it's such an interesting object, like a giant. It reminds me of like when Thor went to go build Stormbreaker, right?
Yeah.
You know, they had to use this big contraption. So, you know, I'm kind of primed for something along these lines, right?
The fun fact is, if you go look at Quantumania, the device that Kang was trying to build with Janet's help actually looks like a small loom, a time loom.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
so
it's fine. I don't expect you to remember everything out of Quantumania. A lot of people didn't go back and revisit that, but it does add some synergy really across the Kang / He Who Remains stuff. I have a theory, Mike, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on this. It's not huge.
Lay it on me.
So, He Who Remains, there's a recording where he's talking to Ravonna Renslayer. He's like, I want to follow you. I want to lead with you, right? Like it sounds like they're lovers. They were in love at some point. My theory is that He Who Remains defeated all the other kings because he went to the one timeline where she actually loved him. She told her, she's like, that was awful. Why would you do that? So he mind wiped her and kept her close by, and then erased any presence of him really by hiding himself. The reason that he let the two Lokis find him at the end is because he's like, this timeline was built out of love, not hate, and that's why it has to be the one true timeline. And like the two Lokis, obviously they love each other because they love themselves. So like the only way that anyone could rule the one true timeline is through love and not hate / anger, which is what all the other Kangs are powered by. Does that make sense?
I mean, it's a solid theory, and it's something that they could work off of for sure.
Yeah.
One thing that doesn't really throw a stick into the spokes or anything is there's still this slight incongruency that I'm feeling between the multiverse / timeline of Loki and kind of what everything else in Marvel has been perpetrating. Of like, yes, Loki is traveling forward and backwards throughout time, and there's these branches of, you know, the sacred timeline or the one true timeline, right? But there still seems to be this whole idea of multiverses that still perpetuates. So if we're watching Loki at face value, I suppose we are to assume every time that there is a branch from that main timeline, that branch is another multiverse, right? Yeah. But from all of the other stuff that we've been watching, it seems like, no, the multiverses, they kind of always exist. That's kind of the whole point of a multiverse, is that there's always infinite versions of everything out there in some aspect, because that's kind of what we saw in Doctor Strange, of like, oh, you can fall through all of these different infinite universes, right?
Yeah.
But we're seeing them actively pruned and destroyed in real time, almost down to like less than a dozen of them. So it seems like there needs to be something happening there. Like, okay, are there infinite number of multiverses, or are there just a couple different timelines that are rogue out there? And Loki still seems to be focusing on the idea of time, of he's going back and he's going forward. But then you also have multiversal, which feels more like a shift, like left and right rather than forward and back. So it's still a little confusing for me to wrap my mind around, because when I first saw Loki kind of doing that time slipping, I thought he was going to like a whole nother universe. Like when we saw him at the end of season 1 and he sees this big Kang statue.
Right.
Oh, I thought he traveled to another universe where the TVA was more like Kang centric. But no, he actually went back in time when Kang was, I guess, still using his in-person branding.
He was being very present with it.
Yeah. And at some point in time, he had to be like, no, we got to cover up all these statues with tile work because apparently my face is a little too imposing, and I got to build these like robot puppets to, hide my mystique.
The interesting part is the TVA says they're not affected by any of this, but then Loki was able to do it. So I'm interested to find out maybe eventually, where does the TVA exist? Right? Where does it exist? How does it do this? Because you can see through the windows. There's obviously a big city out in the TVA. Now, I agree with you. We are going to locations, and it's not, the volume, if you will. But like, there's a lot more of this world, the TVA world, that we're not seeing, and I want to see that rather than the same like 5 locations inside the building.
Yeah. And I feel like also if we're traveling back in time, what's the lady Loki name again? I always
Sylvie.
forget her name. Sylvie, that's right. I kept trying to say Sif, but that wasn't it. So Sylvie goes back to 1982, but when 1982 pops up on the screen, I believe it says branched timeline. Yeah. So theoretically, it's not like she would be seeing the Dairy Queen from Guardians of the Galaxy when they flash back. But the kind of the rogue agent that became an actor in the 70s, I believe he said he's in the main timeline. So technically he could do a movie with Kumail Nanjiani because I think that's all the same timeline. So that's actually kind of what I'm trying to figure out. And
he went back and just took the place of himself rather than he didn't create a new life for himself. Does that make sense? X5 or X2 or X5, whatever his name was. He went back and was like, this was the life I was supposed to lead. So he probably either killed himself or hid his other body somewhere.
And that's
a whole different. That's a whole different thing.
So, but that is what. And even though I'm bringing up all of these question marks, I'm just saying the show is still operating at such a high level that I can almost look past some of these things that like aren't really interconnecting with the big MCU at large right now, just because all the performances are great. I love the chemistry. I love the actors. I love the production design. The special effects are really well
and little at the same time, right? Like it's like the characters have motivations. They have their conversations. They you find out what makes them tick, and then at the same time you're like, oh, there's a huge scene where they have to take down the TVA agents walking into boxes who are gonna like self-destruct those timelines. Kind of thing. So absolutely, I agree. I'm having a really good time. I'm excited to see where the next 4 episodes take us, really, and see where the midpoint is after this week for sure. Anything else on Loki, Mike, before we want to jump into Ahsoka?
I mean, just the only downside is it means I can't cut my hair for a little while because my wife is in love with Tom Hiddleston and the mop on his head. So I have roughly the same length of hair as him right now. So if I go and get a haircut, I'm getting ostracized from my own home.
I need to figure out. I need to start counting how many times he does the head down and the hair flick back move in every episode because
it's a solid move, man.
That's his one move. He's got it down to an art, but it's there. But absolutely, I think Loki's great, and I'm excited to touch base on more Lokis whenever it comes on down the road. All right, so again, we're going to talk about Ahsoka. If you've not seen the Ahsoka series, which is now wrapped, all 6 episodes, please go away, watch it, come back and listen. Or if you want to know more what we think about it, here's the thing. But we're not going to do spoilers down spoilers. We're just going to jump into this. We talked a little bit as this, but obviously, when a show like this is coming out, there's so many news articles. Like, there's nothing I think we could spoil at this point for the show that hasn't been out for 2 weeks at this point. So, absolutely. So, this season wrapped up 6 episodes. I want to say I'm pretty sure the theory / rumor is season 2 of Ahsoka, although not announced, is expected to premiere before Dave Filoni's movie, which I feel how the show ended needs to happen. I don't think they can just jump into a movie where this left off.
I mean, they're stranded on a planet, right? Like you would have to open up the movie with them somehow getting off the planet. Which seems like would almost, and it seems like it would kind of undercut their sacrifice, right? Because that's the big sacrifice they pull at the end of, we get Ezra home, but we stay behind essentially until we die of old age.
Right, exactly. Or the Force finds a way, because the way this works is, so Mike, I've watched all of the Clone Wars. I have seen most of Rebels. This show is for those people who've watched this wholeheartedly. I feel like there's going to be some stuff that's confusing as hell for people who didn't. But boy, do I feel rewarded for having watched those along the way.
Well, and that's truly the double-edged sword of this show for sure.
Yeah. But the ending there, obviously with the late Ray Stevens, which is sad that he passed, he ended up on the, obviously, I've seen the most article of the statues of Mortis, right? The father, the son, and the headless daughter. In the episode of the Clone Wars, the daughter gives up her life to bring Ahsoka back to life in this place called Mortis, which is outside of the Northern universe. It's really weird, really spiritual shit. But that's why that owl follows Ahsoka everywhere, by the way, in case you didn't know that. But boy, this planet has some meaning, and we did not get to it in this first season. And that's really exciting that we can get there. But also at the same time, I'm like, goddamn, 6 episodes was not enough for this show to really pop off.
I feel like in that, I've had some time to meditate on the show, and I haven't really talked to you about it all that much, except when some bigger moments have popped up in the series as it was airing for 6 weeks. But I feel like ultimately, to me, the show was more interesting to me than it was entertaining, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like there was lots of really clever choices being made. I saw a lot of really new things that I wasn't totally used to in Star Wars, and I suppose some of those things might be less new if you were very familiar with like Clone Wars or Rebels. Right. So I felt like I was getting a lot of new avenues and corners and little nooks of Star Wars, which seemed very interesting to me. But I wouldn't say I was entirely compelled by the story that was unfolding. Like, I wanted to see the characters succeed, not because I cared about them. I wanted to see the characters succeed because I want to know what the other side of I want to know what the neighboring galaxy looks like. I want to see the characters succeed because I want to know what mysteries this new planet holds. Yeah. Like, I don't necessarily care about the Padawan relationship or the performances. So that kind of made me feel a little bit like Lucas with the prequels, where he gets to play in this sandbox with all of these interesting world building ideas that he has, but just the execution overall leaves a little bit to be desired. But that's just on my end. Like, I looked at the reviews, people seem to really, really be loving this, but I got to imagine the audience is much smaller for something like this, because I mean, I couldn't get my wife past the first episode because she doesn't know any of these characters. Like, we're primed a little bit with Ahsoka from The Mandalorian, right? But everyone else is not really built up in any way. We're just supposed to kind of know them already. And luckily I watched a Rebels Clone Wars recap video because I love doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, this would be a tough sell for somebody that's very casual in Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, it pays off for those people because it is this is literally a continuation of what Dave Filoni started. Like, if he I think was given the budget to do cartoons, this is what he would be doing, right? Like, if they let, like, you want a Clone Wars season 8, this is, and he's like, yep, I already got the story, here it is, boom. It would be fantastic. Or Rebel season 5, depending on who you talk to, because there's a lot of Rebel stuff here. I like there was nothing here I didn't enjoy. It was fun to see Thrawn. It was fun to see the Night Sisters in live action. The zombie troopers, obviously very, very fun to see. But everything is very quick in this show, and I don't like that. 8 episodes is not what this show needed. It needed more. Give it it was 6. It needed 8 or 10, maybe even 12, Mike. Like an Andor season, if you will, to really get through. Because, like, I feel like, oh, hey, she landed, she goes out to find Ezra. Well, within the same episode, she finds Ezra. And I'm like, okay, great. And then the next episode, like, okay, now they're with the... So, like, everything is moving at the pace it needs to get the story moving. But I'm like, it doesn't need to go this fast. I would love to, not just myself, but everybody else needs to know how these characters interact with each other. How do they know each other? What is that dynamic between them all, right? And
because I wasn't really getting a lot of these emotional payoffs either.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, if you were with the Clone Wars and Rebels for a while, maybe the relationships make a little bit more sense. But I see Sabine, right? That's the Mandalorian Padawan, right? Yeah. I see her character as literally sacrificing everything in her life to get to Ezra. And then when she finally sees him on screen, they're just kind of like, oh, hey, what's up? Like, there was no, like, I'm not expecting them to be romantically entangled, but, like, I don't even think there was a hug. They didn't even physically embrace each other in any way. And this is somebody that's been stranded in another galaxy thinking that they'd never get back home, and they see a familiar face, and it's just like, oh, what's up? Like, what is happening here? What is the directorial choice for that to be the scene, how it is portrayed? And I guess if you're really into the Filoni story and characters, I guess it could make more sense. But to me, I'm just like, well, this feels really odd to go to all of these lengths and it's to be no emotional connection. Really,
there is. I mean, I think it's there, but it's just sped up, right? It's just speed it up, move along. We got to get to the next point because we have 6 episodes. We got to do this in 6 episodes, folks. So we're gonna keep going. Then, so like, we never had time to really sit and enjoy it. Like, Ray Stevens played a great character, but he was very stoic, and I don't really know why he was stoic for this show, right? Like, something's calling to him on this planet. He's following the Force. Obviously, he knows something about the Mortis and the Force, embodiments. But I'm like, give me a little more than just an intense stare, sir. Like, I need a little bit more than an intense stare and like some sort of like sage wisdom. Obviously they're not Sith. I think their lightsabers were orange. Whether they were red or orange depends on, I guess, what TV you had. But to your point, I think they were orange. But like, Shin had a Padawan braid. Why did she have a Padawan braid? Is that like, what was that relationship like? A little bit more, right? So I feel everything was just forced very quickly because of the episode count, and not really because, and they got to what they needed to, but like it didn't serve the story as much as it should have at the end of the day. Does that make sense? Like, it sounds like maybe you might feel the same way. It's just fast. Like, it was just there to get there, and like there was no time to really relish the little moments between everybody.
Yeah, like I kind of had to lean into the enjoyment of things and stuff.
Yeah.
Because they weren't really building these connections between these characters at all. Like you were saying, was that the name of the other bad?
Yeah,
guy,
the girl, the blonde girl.
Yeah, I felt like she was the only one, like, just really delivering like raw emotions, like a lot of very expressive, lots of energy, like just the only thing that was, I feel like, really sparking and lighting up the screen.
Well, she was the only one doing anything different.
Yeah, and it was also, this was my first experience with Thrawn in really any meaningful way, and I thought he was interesting. I do like how you have this person who's supposed to be a master general. Like, I'm under the assumption that he's not really a fighter, right? If you just had a blaster or a lightsaber, I feel like you could just like strike this guy down, but that's not the issue here. It's that he's this masterful tactician, and he knows the situation that he's in is incredibly dire, so his main goal is to, just get out of there. Yeah. He's not so much worried about exacting revenge, which I thought was very interesting, right? I feel like a lot of these bad guys in Star Wars are always very emotionally driven, right? Oh, I want to be the leader. I want to take over everything. Like, I can see Thrawn's cold and calculating side, which is exciting.
Yeah, well, because everyone else is usually a villain. Like, they're angry or they're full of hate. And he's, again, Thrawn's very self-serving, right? Obviously, he has made this deal with these witches to go to, at the end, they go back to the planet of the Dathomir, where the Night Sisters are, with a bunch of what looks like sarcophagi with them. Like, it looks like they're gonna like bring back an army of the undead, like, to fight with it. Which I thought that actually gets me pretty, like, very excited at the end. Like, I'm like, okay, those are obviously coffins with people in them. Are they going to bring back dead Night Sisters? Are they going to bring back dead Stormtroopers? What is he doing with these, like, bodies? Because that is going to get me excited for whatever's next, because that's different, right? That's new. That's not something we've seen before in Star Wars. He's not, he's limping along to even get to Dathomir with a piecemealed spaceship. But he's very, very adamant about taking those coffins with him. So what is his plan? Because you mentioned he's a masterful tactician. He didn't need to go out and destroy them. He just needed to distract them and delay them so he could leave them there. So I'm very curious. Also, like I said, this show was interesting to me. Yep. And the most interesting thing is this planet and what's happening there on this planet. Yep. If Thrawn did indeed take corpses off of it, maybe he took other resources as well, which will give him a competitive fighting advantage out there in the old galaxy. Are Ahsoka and Sabine going to find something there that's going to give them a competitive advantage? Maybe they'll commune with nature and unlock a new force power, or it seemed I just don't know. Something's happened. Like, what are these big cryptic monuments that exist on the planet? Right.
Like, what? Like, this is all very interesting. I just want them to nail everything else that a TV show has to have outside of, the premise.
See, I say give them 8 episodes. Stop making them rush through 6 episodes. Like, I understand the 6 episode count works for a lot of shows, but like, after watching Clone Wars, after watching Rebels, Filoni works in waves of 3s rather than waves of 2s. So, like, give him 9 episodes for a show. It's fine. You have money to do it, and you'll get the returns. Imagine the Star Wars toys you can sell with zombie stormtroopers at Halloween. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Those zombie stormtroopers were cool. I mean, if I was like in the replica prop, kind of community, if I liked building like cosplay of stormtrooper armor, you've just unlocked so many new outfits for that community, right? Just like the bandages that are across them. Just like the performances of being inside of it, you're kind of lumbering around. I was like, oh, that stuff's cool. And it makes so much more sense why they're like so easy to control, because they're basically being brainwashed. I mean, if I was a stormtrooper and I was stranded on another planet, like for what, 30, 20 years? I don't know how long it was.
They've only been there for like maybe 9-10 years.
Oh, that's enough for me to go AWOL. I don't care about you. I'm gonna go make my own little settlement.
Well, they obviously don't have the resources to keep everyone alive, right? So they're dying through attrition, even. So absolutely. So yeah, you've got to do something. I excited. I also was fun to see the actual Death Troopers, like the bigger ones at the end there, where she shoved the lightsaber blade through his face. That's right. That they've been dead for a while. They're not like fresh dead. So
and also that stormtrooper with the gold mask. Yeah, a perfect example of something crazy interesting to me, right? And I'm just curious. Are we in another Captain Phasma situation here where I'm never gonna get any payoff for what's under that mask? Yeah. It looks cool as hell though, so I hope that something comes from that stormtrooper.
Exactly. So he's one of maybe the few alive ones left, but at what cost? So I think Ahsoka, I had a good time. It's payoff from watching everything else. I just wish I'd had more time with it rather than rush through everything, because I think there's a lot more to be explored and to be told. And for the average viewer, maybe the person who'd watched Mandalorian and come over to this, they're going to be a little more confused than the average bear. Yeah. But it was nice that it's very much opposite of Mandalorian. It's very much opposite of Andor. Like it sits in its own quadrant, really, if you will, of Star Wars shows.
Yeah. Ultimately, I feel like maybe, unfortunately, I don't know if I could go around and recommend this to just any old person, right? Yeah. I'd have to sit down and have a whole conversation of like, what's your, how committed are you to this universe? What have you watched? Could I interest you in a YouTube recap before you started this, right? This is, and this is also just an issue in general that any long-lasting franchise is going to have if you keep, for lack of a better term, milking the franchise, right? You gotta educate your audience at some point in time, right? That's why you see all of these like rebooted comic books get made. That's why you see younger cartoons made for younger audiences, because you gotta bring in the audience soon, because like eventually this is just like Social Security in the United States, right? Eventually all the old people are going to need services and all of the young people are going to have to pay for it, and if that formula starts to tip the other direction, everything starts to go belly up. So you could not build the next 20 years of Star Wars off of these characters, because they're not well known enough, and eventually they terminate, right? Because you have Rey and all of those characters in the future. So it seems like maybe that's why they went this direction of like, well, we're only going to be around for maybe 1 or 2 more seasons, culminate with a big old movie, we'll move on to something else.
Well, they've got to wipe the slate clean before that Force Awakens comes clean, and all these characters so far are, I would say, expendable, if you will, right? Like nobody, which is great, because if they do make a movie, everyone is on the line. No one has to make it out of the movie alive, which is interesting. But I will think, if you are only watching coming from The Mandalorian and the live action movies, this is a very weird spinoff of an episode of Mandalorian season 2 where Ahsoka was trying to fight somebody. If you don't know the whole story, it's very much, I agree with you, it's very much out of that. But for those who did watch it, this show's like fucking spot on for everyone who knows everything else. You're like, yep, I know that, and that, and you're having a good time. So, I don't know. I'm excited to see if a season 2 gets announced. I assume it will. Hopefully the TV approach that, Disney's doing. I mean, again, I don't think The Mandalorian and Andor and Ahsoka suffer from the same things Marvel does in terms of producers, but maybe they can be like, all right, we need to serialize this, give you another season, do the movie, and then boom, we can focus on episode 10 and stuff beyond that kind of going forward. So cross our fingers. We are in a weird place with Star Wars, but it's only going to get weirder before it gets better. All right, Mike, that's the show. That's a long one. A little bit of a bonus episode this week, if you will. Whole thing through and through. But if people want to know what you're up to, what you're doing, where can they find you at, man?
Yeah, they can find me at Mike Royer Design on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. You can read my webcomic at liferewardsrisk.com. Chris, if people want to catch up with you and eventually just find you playing Spider-Man, just like me, this coming weekend, where can they find you?
Yes, that's true. You can find me on Instagram, Valdan87, VALDAN87. But also, pretty sure that's my PlayStation handle if you want to see how many trophies I've unlocked on this game, because I've 100%ed the first 2 games through and through. So, gonna go for this one too. If people know more about the show, where they can come back, we are on a regularly scheduled program for the foreseeable future. We are not taking any more weeks off that I know of. Where can they find all the good episodes coming up and in the past at?
Yeah, all you got to do, if you want to find our giant galactic star cruiser with light speed capabilities, it's over at superheroslate.com. That's the best place to find all the avenues we host our show. And also to get our awesome kick-ass show notes. We talked about a lot of stuff this week. We got that all there over at the website. We got an awesome upcoming release calendar, which is becoming very, very, very helpful because I don't know when anything comes out anymore because things have shifted so much. So we do our best to keep that updated and just a nice, simple text-based, no pop-ups. We're not going to blacklist you from our websites if you're running an ad blocker like YouTube does now. That was a fun thing to come back to after vacation of like, what is this pop-up? I'm trying to watch this Monarch trailer in the middle of recording this podcast. What is going on here? So you don't have to worry about any of that. Head on over to superheroslate.com. You can get swag at superheroslate.com/store. We love hearing from you. Let us know what you thought about the kickoff of Loki season 2 or what you thought about Ahsoka. We love hearing from our fans. And if you want to be a super fan of the show, all you got to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we will be here every week, folks.
That's right. We will catch you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.